We begin not with life, but with arrival. A moment so sacred, so unfathomably precise that no scripture or science dares to define it. The instant when the eternal becomes temporary, when something infinite agrees to wear a name, when the soul enters the body. But no one talks about that threshold, because it's not visible, it's felt, not with the eyes, but with memory. A memory so ancient it exists outside time. A memory that stirs in dreams you can't explain, in déjà vu that bends logic, in the quiet knowing that you've been here before. But when does the soul enter? Not conception, that's biology. Not birth, that's emergence. The true arrival, the sacred indwelling, happens in a silence the modern world no longer hears. The ancients heard it. They charted the phases. They watched the stars. They knew the pulse of cosmic rhythm, and they understood. The soul doesn't drop like a stone. It descends in layers. It wraps itself around the nervous system, echoes into the heartbeat, whispers into the blood. And for a time, the body and soul are not yet one. They are becoming. This is the sacred threshold. It cannot be forced. It cannot be faked. It's not a moment on a medical chart. It's a resonance, a precise vibration when matter becomes receptive, and the soul finally says, yes. Yes, I will enter. Yes, I will forget. Yes, I will carry karma, lineage, memory, light. And in that, yes, the journey begins. But no one teaches this anymore, because we've reduced birth to biology. We've turned incarnation into accident. We've forgotten the mysticism of entry. And without that reverence, we miss the miracle. You are not just born, you were woven, thread by thread, vibration by vibration, a field of light folded into flesh. And whether you remember it consciously or not, your arrival was sacred. So the question isn't if your soul chose this body. The question is, do you remember why? There is a reason the soul doesn't rush. You might think incarnation is instant, that a soul selects a body and simply arrives. But the descent is sacred, timed, layered. The soul doesn't drop into the body. It approaches, slowly, cautiously, like light adjusting to shadow. Because what awaits it is not just flesh. What awaits it is forgetting. To enter the body is to agree to a kind of amnesia. The soul must dim itself, compress its infinite awareness into something linear, something limited. The body, after all, is not a container of light. It is a filter, and that filter is not always clear. Trauma, genetics, lineage, environment, all these factors shape the body's field before the soul even touches it. And the soul feels that. It senses what it's stepping into. And sometimes it hesitates. This hesitation isn't fear, it's discernment. The soul is ancient, wise. It knows the weight of what it's about to carry. And so, it circles, it observes, it waits for the moment of alignment, when the energetic architecture of the body and the blueprint of the soul match. This is why some traditions speak of the quickening, a moment in gestation when movement begins, and with it, the first echo of presence. It's not just physical, it's metaphysical. It's the signature of arrival. But arrival is not always smooth. Some souls enter through resistance, through grief, through ancestral debt, through karmic obligation. Others come through longing, love waiting to be reborn. Either way, the descent is not passive. It is an act of will, a holy risk. Because once the soul enters, everything changes. The body begins to adapt, subtly, quietly. The nervous system shifts. The energy field expands. The fetus becomes a vessel, not just for life, but for memory. Not memory of this world, memory of where it came from. This is why newborns stare so deeply. They remember. For a brief window, seconds, maybe minutes, they hold both realms, the eternal and the temporal. And in that space, if you're still enough, present enough, you might feel it too. The pulse of something vast, becoming small, not to suffer, to serve, because that's what incarnation is, service. The soul does not enter to escape, it enters to embody. to bring what is infinite into form, to carry wisdom into time, to move the collective forward by forgetting just enough to rediscover itself again. So now ask yourself, what if the very pain of being born was the first lesson in remembering who you truly are? No one remembers the moment they arrived, not because it wasn't meaningful, but because forgetting was part of the contract. You see, the soul doesn't just enter the body, it enters the veil, a field of forgetfulness, a designed blindness, a mercy and a mystery. This veil is not punishment, it's preparation. Because if you remembered everything at once, the lifetimes, the karmas, the choices, you'd collapse under the weight. The ego would shatter, the psyche would fragment. To survive here, we must forget just enough to believe we are beginning. This is why the first breath matters, not just biologically, energetically. The first inhale marks the final seal, the soul fully inside the body. The veil drops, and with it, a new identity is born. Not the true self, but the earth self, a personality shaped by time, touch, and trauma. A name, a story, a role. But deep beneath it, the soul never forgets. It waits in silence, in symbols, in dreams and déjà vu. It whispers through intuition. It nudges in synchronicity. It speaks through the body's aches, the heart's longings, the strange pull you feel towards certain people, places, memories that were never yours. The soul remembers what the mind cannot hold, and at some point, if you're ready, it begins to reawaken. The veil thins, and suddenly you're asking questions no one around you can answer. Why am I here? Where did I come from? Why does this world feel both familiar and wrong? That's not confusion, that's remembrance, a sacred glitch in the forgetting, a signal that the soul is rising, not leaving but emerging, not escaping the body but infusing it. And as it does, life begins to look different. The world feels heavier, yet you carry it more lightly. Pain returns, but it has meaning now. Loss becomes a message, and all of it begins to pull you back, not just to your purpose, but to your presence. Because you were never meant to stay asleep. You were meant to awaken inside the dream. But to do that, you must choose. So if you've made it this far, if something in you is remembering even now, then this is the moment to subscribe to the channel and tap the bell icon, not just to follow, but to return to yourself, to your origin, to what you forgot the moment you first arrived. Before the soul enters, it chooses, not randomly, not blindly, but intentionally. You didn't land in your life by accident. You agreed, not to suffering, but to meaning. The soul chooses based on frequency, on karmic momentum, on what it still needs to feel, to resolve, to remember. The body it enters, the family it incarnates into, the place, the time, even the challenges, none of it is random. All of it is designed. Designed not by fate, but by resonance. This is the blueprint, and it isn't written in words. It's encoded in vibration. A soul's frequency matches the specific energetic conditions of a body, a lineage, a timeline. This match isn't always pleasant. In fact, the strongest souls often choose the most difficult lives. Why? Because friction reveals truth. The soul doesn't evolve through ease, it evolves through integration. So it picks the wounds it's ready to feel, the triggers it's ready to transcend, the limitations it's ready to break. And in doing so, it accepts the risk of forgetting why it came. That's the sacred risk. To enter the veil without a guarantee of return. To gamble comfort for the chance to transform. And yet, it comes, not just to grow, but to serve, not through grand gestures, but through embodiment, presence, a vibration that once held shifts the field around it. The soul doesn't need a platform, it needs a body, and that body is you. But here's the part no one tells you. Your blueprint isn't a script, it's a seed. It contains potential, but not prediction. You are not bound by it, you are called by it. And the more you remember, the more it activates. You begin to feel the pulls more clearly, the resistance more precisely, the messages more frequently, and with every moment of awareness, the blueprint unfolds. You meet people who feel familiar. You're drawn to places with no explanation. You receive insights that don't come from thinking. This is alignment, not with the ego's path, but with the soul's. So here's what to ask yourself next. If your life was chosen by you, then what challenge are you facing right now that might actually be your initiation? Don't rush to answer. Sit with it, because the moment you ask the question, the soul starts to respond. The soul doesn't speak in language. It speaks in sensation, tightness in the chest, heat in the spine, a pulse behind the eyes. These aren't random bodily quirks. They're signals, echoes. The soul pushing through the density of form, trying to be felt in a world that forgot how to listen. Because the body is not separate from the soul. It's the instrument of it. You are not a soul trapped in a body. You are a soul expressing through a body. Every nerve, every breath, every cell is a translation. And when something is misaligned in your life, the first place it shows up is your flesh. Tension, fatigue, dis-ease. Symptoms, yes, but also messages. The stomach that knots before you lie. The throat that closes when you silence your truth. The back that aches from carrying what was never yours. These are not flaws. They're flares, signals from the deeper self, and most of us ignore them. We medicate, we push through, we label them stress. But what if these sensations were reminders? What if your body remembers what your mind forgot? The soul doesn't always scream. It whispers. It waits for stillness. It waits for presence. This is why the ancient traditions centered around embodiment, breath, posture, movement, chant, not for performance, but for resonance. Because when the body aligns with soul frequency, something sacred happens. You start to feel real, not because you understand more, but because you resist less. You stop outsourcing wisdom. You begin to trust the signals within, and the body begins to soften. The tension isn't gone, but it's no longer against you. It becomes part of the conversation, a two-way channel. You listen, you respond, and slowly a new relationship forms, not with your body, but through it. A relationship with presence, with life as it is, not as the mind wishes it to be. And from this place, the soul becomes not just an idea, but an experience, a felt frequency, a living intelligence guiding you from within. So ask yourself, what has your body been trying to say that your mind refuses to hear? The answer won't come as a thought. It will come as a feeling. And if you're willing to feel it, you're already halfway home. You think you began when you were born. You didn't. You arrived. But your soul, it's older than time. It carries echoes not just of past lives, but of entire dimensions of being, some never touched by form. You're not just a person with a past. You're a field of memory, wrapped in flesh. And the body you wear, it's just the latest page in a book that never ends. This is why time feels strange to you. Why some moments stretch endlessly, while others vanish. Why you meet someone and feel like you've known them forever. Why you stand in a place you've never been and feel like you've just returned. That's not nostalgia, that's recognition. The soul doesn't track time by clocks. It tracks resonance, places, people, frequencies. And when it finds a match, it vibrates, it stirs, it sends signals through dreams, through longing, through sudden, irrational knowing. This is why you're drawn to the metaphysical, why you crave silence when others need noise, why you're obsessed with why. Because something in you remembers, not details, vibration. And with every step on this path, that memory grows louder. You start to see through patterns. You notice synchronicities. You stop reacting and start witnessing. Because deep down, you know you've done this before, but you're not here to repeat. You're here to transcend, to integrate what was scattered, to rewrite what was distorted, to finally embody what you've always known but never fully lived. That's why this life matters, not because it's perfect, but because it's aligned. Because this time you have access to knowledge that was once hidden, practices that were once secret, tools your soul seeded for you to find again. That's what déjà vu really is, not memory, a breadcrumb trail, and every time you follow it, you close a loop, you reclaim a part of yourself that time tried to erase. You dissolve karma not through force but through clarity. So now ask yourself, if your soul has done this before, what would it do differently this time, if only you let it lead? The answer may not be what your ego wants, but it might be exactly what your soul came here for. You didn't fall into this life, you signed up for it, not in a moment of impulse, but in a space of complete clarity. Before form, before language, before even memory, you knew what this incarnation would cost and what it could offer. This is the soul's contract, not written in ink, but in intention. You chose the pain, the joy, the people who would leave too soon, and the ones who would stay too long. You chose the gifts you'd forget, the wounds you'd carry, the challenges that would threaten to break you, not because you enjoy suffering, but because you understood its power. The soul doesn't fear contrast, it requires it, because only in shadow does light become visible, only in limitation does expansion become real. The soul doesn't evolve through avoidance, it evolves through embodiment. So you came here not to bypass the human experience, but to transform it from the inside. And here's the sacred truth. Your greatest challenges are not mistakes, they're assignments. Each heartbreak, each betrayal, each illness, each silence, coded with lessons your soul specifically came to feel, not conceptually, cellularly, so that wisdom wouldn't just be an idea, but a frequency. This is why awakening hurts, because it activates the contract. You start to see patterns not as coincidences, but as clues. You realize your triggers aren't enemies, they're guides. You stop asking, why me, and start asking, what is this trying to reveal? And slowly, the pain begins to speak, in symbols, in dreams, in people who show up as mirrors, sometimes harsh, always accurate. And with each mirror, you remember more, not who you should be, who you are. And with that remembrance comes power, not control, clarity. You begin to move differently, not faster, but truer. You stop chasing, you start choosing. Not because you figured it all out, but because your soul has finally taken the lead. And now you're living the contract awake. So ask yourself, if you chose every part of your life before you got here, what are you still resisting that might be your soul's way of keeping a promise? Because once you remember you agreed to all of this, everything changes. And now you're beginning to see, not with your eyes, with your origin. You are not someone who woke up. You are someone who remembered. You didn't come here to escape the human experience. You came to make it sacred again, to live fully inside the contradiction, divine and flawed, infinite and fragile. You're not here to rise above the body. You're here to descend fully into it, with awareness so deep it dissolves illusion wherever it lands. This is the soul's true path, not to ascend, but to embody, to take what was once cosmic and live it in the mundane. And that begins not in temples, but in traffic, in conversations, in silence, in the breath that's happening right now. Because here's the secret the ancients knew. You never actually left. The soul didn't fall into a body, it wove itself in. And the more you remember that, through stillness, through struggle, through surrender, the thinner the veil becomes, until one day, you're not remembering anymore. You're being fully, clearly, now. And this is the threshold no one talks about, not when the soul enters the body, but when it takes over, not by force, but by choice, your choice. To live without pretending, to feel without numbing, to walk this world as a soul in skin, not seeking the light, but radiating it. So here's your final reflection. Drop it in the comments and let it haunt you. If you've always been the soul, what would change if you finally stopped acting like a body trying to become one? Let the illusion crumble, let the truth burn, and when the world feels heavy again, come back here, not to watch a video, but to remember a vibration, the one you carried before the first breath.